Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Are One Body Audio Theatre Studio. I am here with most of my colleagues today and a special guest, Albert Sines. We're going to talk about The Heating Contractor by James G. Bruin Jr. You can find this on our website at www.waobAudiotheatre.org. So just to go around the room, we have here John.
I'm John Watechko, Director and Editor at WAOB Audio Theatre.
And special guest Albert.
Albert Sines, volunteer writer and technical whatever. I just sort of do whatever I can here at Audio Theatre. So glad to be here.
Over here we have Tom Marinchak.
Hey, how's it going, Grelin? Producer and sound technician.
And Jacob Gorsuch.
Hey, I'm Jacob Gorsuch. I do a lot of the sound effects over here at WAOB.
All right. So we've all worked on The Heating Contractor. Albert was in The Heating Contractor. Just a little background and spoiler alert. There's going to be spoilers all through this interview.
This is spoiling.
Yeah, we're going to spoil you.
Spoil.
So The Heating Contractor is a follow-up story to the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel. Anyone want to give a quick recap of Hansel and Gretel?
Yeah, sure. Let's see here. We have a family who is running out of food at their house in the woods, and you have a stepmother. I think the mom died, the real mother died, and I don't know if I don't know what the profession is of the father, but I don't think they really say. But either way,
Poor.
They pretty much are running out of food. The stepmother suggests, let's get rid of the two little kids that we have, Hansel and Gretel. And so they lead the kids into the woods, and actually it is Hans who finds out about it. And in the first, I think this is Grimm's story, by the way. There's always adaptation to the stories. But either way, he goes in, he comes back because he had some, I think, stones or something he laid. So he followed this.
Hansel lays a trail of stones.
Yeah. So
he
comes back to the house, and the stepmother's like, and they do the same thing over again because once again they're running out of food. So they lead him back into the woods. The dad's all distraught. He's like, "Oh, okay, why are we doing this? Okay, I understand. The kids will starve, and it will make us better. Don't know how that works, but either way, he leaves breadcrumbs this time, and unfortunately, they can't find because the birds ate the breadcrumbs. Okay, so the kids are little. They're little, and in the middle of the woods. They're all worried and scared, and they come across a house made out of bread and cake, okay? And it's a witch's house who, once again, lured them in by making her house out of bread and cake,
If only more houses could be made out of bread
and cake. Yeah,
but not have witches in them.
But not have witches.
Yeah, definitely,
Right.
definitely. And could you imagine biting that? It had to be stale, It had to be like a stale
but
cake.
they were starving.
But
they were starving.
But it was a
right.
witch's house, so it could have been magical bread.
Yeah, absolutely. But
Garlic,
what type
it could have
of...
been garlic knots. It could have been made of garlic knots.
There you go. Yeah.
Sourdough
And it would
rye.
like the smell would have been like, what is that? Ooh, that smells good.
Sorry, I'm digressing.
So-
Okay, no. But either way, so they start nibbling on the house, and the witch comes out. Who's that nibbling on my house? And they welcome the kids in, and then all of a sudden she locks up Hansel into like a barn or something, and she's like trying to fatten him up, and it ends up the witch can't see very well because. Obviously, witches can't see, I guess. But either way, they stick the chicken bone out. No, he's not. You need, or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting the stories mixed up.
They tricked the witch, essentially, to think that Hansel is not getting any fatter.
Right. And then eventually, she can't see. So I think Gretel tricks her saying, hey, I can't light the stove or I'm not going to fit or something. And she goes, oh, yes, you can fit. See? And then she climbs into it. And then Gretel shuts the door on the oven. And then that's the end of the witch, So that's basically the end of the story. And I think they end up going home or something because I think, there was also like a big swan that they had they found a big swan or a duck or something in the middle of a pond, and then the duck gave them a ride back home, yeah, it was kind of like weird.
It's a weird story.
That's a
It
weird
was
story.
because I couldn't understand why the duck. What was with the big duck or swan giving them a ride, and But either way,
If only we
they
could
came
ask
back.
Grimm
I
Yeah,
what was going
yeah,
on.
yeah,
The thing is, they wouldn't know because the Brothers Grimm did collect these stories as folk tales, so they would have had to ask their source. But
Nice.
anyway, that's really beside the point. So, so this story, The Heating Contractor, is a modern creative reinterpretation of what Hansel and Gretel's life might be like, say, I don't know what, 70 years down the road,
Yeah.
maybe 65. So, Albert, you played in The Heating Contractor. You were the heating contractor, actually.
Right, I was Larry,
You
the
were-
heating contractor, not Larry, the cable guy.
Right, Larry, the heating contractor. And spoiler alert, you get eaten.
Well, baked. They really didn't eat him, right?
Right.
They threw him out, but we really don't know what they were doing with him.
Right.
We can only imagine that they were going to eat him, but maybe they were just going to decorate him up with
So the
icing.
they that we're talking about is grown up Hansel and Gretel, which are Hans and Greta in the story. So we have gotten a few questions of why are we putting this story on the air? What is good about this story? What can we draw from such a dark and creepy story?
The very first thing that just, the reason why I think Gretelin said, "Hey, what do you think about this story?" And I read it and I was like, "This is an awesome story." And the
Why do
reason
you
why
think it was awesome, Tom?
Well, the reason why I thought it was great was just the creativity of how Jerry brought an old story back and with a twist. Obviously, as I was reading it, it was like, okay, yeah, this is Hansel and Gretel. Where's he going to go with it? And even though that, okay, well, I knew the kids, the witch was going to try to eat the kids. I really didn't think anything was going to happen until I got to the end. I was like, what? Wow. And I think that's the reason why I liked the story, because it was creative. He used his creative mind. It was great. I love stories that are creative. But going back to listening to it again, yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, I guess that is a dark story. I guess, yeah, eating people is not normal, But then, you have to look at, well, deeper within the story, right? Well, what can I get out of this, right? And the one thing that I did see was, once again, the lifestyle of Hansel and Gretel. They didn't have a good home in the very beginning. So maybe that's part of the reason why it's dark at the end. Nobody else was there to teach them anything that was, I don't know that I think it had something to do with their childhood, possibly. Anybody else? What do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot that you can take away from the story comes from Hans and Greta. They're, even though it's called The Heating Contractor and he's part of the story, you're not following his character to learn a moral or anything from him. He's just more of a pawn in the story. You're learning about Hans and Greta, and I think if you didn't know the story of Hansel and Gretel, you wouldn't get the same impact. It would just seem like a weird story. It just has to be understood in the
True.
context of that story to know who these characters are, because then I think you start wondering, so how does a person become this way?
Mhm.
So we saw
Right.
the other story. How did that story affect them to become these people they are now?
Good point.
Which can help you, I think about other stories differently. If you go back to, say, Hansel and Gretel, why was the stepmother so mean, for example? What happened in her life that made her that way? It kind of cues you into the fact that everybody has a backstory. Don't judge a book by its cover, even if it's a book of cannibal people. There is always something more behind what people do and what people say.
Yeah.
Now, it's not necessarily giving moral justification to what Hans and Gretel are doing,
Right.
but you understand what some people are driven to because of what they were exposed to. either by desperation, by the way they were raised, by some other outside force that was impacting their lives. And you want to then say, oh, okay, I don't agree with what they're doing, but it makes sense. So in this instance, we have the original story. You have a stepmother who was mean and trying to abandon the kids. The father supports it begrudgingly, and they're left alone to fend for themselves. They encounter a witch, which must be only, you can imagine how trying that must be for a child. Then they're left by themselves in a house, by themselves, trying to stay alive. So what is someone driven to out of desperation? And you become, you're not so quick to want to lay down some sort of, almighty judgment upon them.
You're also, I think, able to both help the person, because if you know where they're coming from, you can help them. You can't usually help somebody very easily if you don't know where they're coming from. So you're able to kind of see them as a human being and say, okay, how can I help you? And also, you're able to hopefully prevent some kind of future wrongdoing. You can't break a cycle of abuse if you don't know that there is a cycle of abuse.
Right.
So having backstory about anybody is important.
Right. I mean, look at the in the very beginning of the story, I was for Hansel, Hans, and Greta, because once again they're getting robbed. It seemed like by heating contractors and other contractors and stuff like that.
At the beginning, you relate to them.
Yeah, you do. You really
they
do.
seem like very normal people. They're like, oh, here's another person trying to scam us. And you're like, yeah, why are people always trying to scam old people? That's not right.
Right,
You're like,
right.
But you're like, well, they're going to give him a chance. They think he seems nice. And you're with them the entire time until Hans pushes the heating contractor into the fire.
Yeah,
You're like, oh.
I thought they were the good guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you definitely it definitely also like lets you know that people are more gray than like black or white, good or bad. They might seem nice. They might actually be nice in some ways, but have other issues. I mean, the big thing with them is that, like Albert had gone on talking about, is like, they have been living in isolation for however long they've been living there. They grew up with like a lack of compassion toward them. Like they had a very bitter and like unloving childhood, which then extended into their life, which brings them to where they are now. And so you see where people can be if they don't have, a loving environment, people who care about them, people surrounding them with help or anything like that. You can see how someone can end up where they are. So you can empathize with them. You don't have to agree with them still. Like, again, none of the story is saying that you should stand behind them as they're doing these things. You can and should disagree with it, but you can at least see who these people are and maybe how they got to where they are.
Yeah, good point. And once again, it goes with the story, right? A lot of people see that this is a dark story, and that's all they see. But what did you get out? What did you learn from this dark story? So that's the thing. What did you learn from the dark story? Whatever it is, whether it's this story or another story, just because you don't like it, because you heard it and you say, I disagree with this, but what did you learn from it? Here for me, raising the temperature of 250 degrees to 450 degrees to cook people could be a little bit better thing. But no, kidding aside, I had to say that because once again, I was like 250 degrees to cook somebody, But either way,
slow cooker.
a slow cooker. But all in all, really don't judge a book by its cover. Okay.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah. Good. Right. Because once again, you have Hans and Greta, right? They look like two trusting people, right? But really, I guess you couldn't trust them, So there's always a backstory, once again, with people, Relationship could be a good thing, too, getting to know the person a little bit better before you judge them, And once again, with the, with the mom and dad, going back to Grimm, we don't know their backstory either, So I guess there's always that backstory that we need to really go a little bit deeper
And it goes
find
into
out.
the simple reality that, sin is in the world and dark things happen in the world because of sin. So it's sadly an inescapable reality that we're going to run into dark things. So it's not like you should go read every dark story you can to prepare yourself, but it's not the worst preparation to think, okay, here's a situation I can get into that isn't real.
Right.
To sort of stretch my imagination and say, okay, where do these people come from? Why are they acting in this way?
But in that same vein, we can learn how sin enters into the world in all the different ways, in the really serious ways and the not so serious ways, and in this instance, the ways of actual culpability. Like, are they really culpable at a stage of serious sin if they didn't know any better? If this is what they were taught,
Right,
like,
right.
well, someone tried to cook us, so this must be the norm.
This must be
They had no one to raise
right,
them, no one
right.
to show them love, because they don't show any guilt really at the end. They're
No,
like, nope,
no,
no,
this is a normal
everything's
thing.
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Versus like, this was, I'm really struggling with this. So they don't seem to know any better, or they don't care. So no one maybe was there to say, well, no one was there to say, you shouldn't do this. This is wrong. So
Right.
when we read these stories, we see the different forms, the different levels, the different, the different dark stages of sin, how it comes in, how it affects different people, how someone can triumph over sin, how someone is kind of ruled by it, but in a way that they're completely unaware, because so many people don't even know that they're chained by a particular sin. They have no idea, absolutely no idea.
Yeah,
Great
that's
point.
really amazing how their childhood trauma led their subconscious and conscious mind to believe that they were actually doing the right thing.
Right. They
Right.
were providing for themselves
Yeah.
for the winter.
Well, that's why I think it's really interesting to do a follow-up of Hansel and Gretel. Because, like, if left to my own devices, I would assume that they defeated the witch and got out and lived happily ever after. Like, I wouldn't have thought that they would continue on that tradition, but it makes sense. If these are very impressionable young people and they had a tough home life and have been taught that this is what's going on and this is the only way to survive, then that would seem like the right thing to do. And it's a reminder of, like, that bad things in most cases beget more bad things because they taught and we're taught something a certain way. That's what they're going to do. And, if someone came across them or like if they were to have kids, with somebody, which obviously they don't, which I think is also telling that they just are living just brother and sister by themselves. Like they don't even try to bring
Have a
more
life.
human contact into their lives.
Yeah,
They-
because they didn't know what Angie's List was.
Right.
yeah, I mean they're just
You
on
know?
their own. Like
Yeah.
they're
Right.
literally
Just them.
just
And
them.
the
They've
people
been
they
in
eat.
this place forever.
Yeah, yeah, and they were definitely afraid of the outside world as well. They
Yeah.
didn't trust people.
Right.
In the same way that I'm sure the witch didn't either. I mean, she was
Right.
living by herself in the middle of the forest.
Right, right.
Yep. Community is a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much. I think this was a really great conversation. If anyone has any other comments or thoughts about the Heating Contractor, or Hansel and Gretel, sin, anything else, please leave them for us to find either below this video or you could visit our website and you can contact us through our website. Thanks again, and we hope that you'll tune in again soon.